So this is the chaos of different government types. You will notice certain countries around the world, they've literally been on a roller coaster ride, switching between the most radically different political compass ideologies you could imagine. France being a very notable example here, switching from monarchy to republic to empire to back to monarchy, then finally republic again, all under 50 years. Sometimes it just takes certain places a little bit longer to figure this stuff out than others. And this video is by Ollie Bai, so you already know it's going to be a banger. So the year starts in 1789, which is a very notable year. We are about to start this French Revolution, and we're going to see exactly how, well, true those memes that I showed earlier in this video actually are. So let's see exactly. We have a lot of monarchies, and we're going to remain mostly a majority monarchy up until after World War I. That was kind of the death there, kind of. I mean, obviously here in 2025, we don't have a lot of like pure, absolute monarchies. But as you can see, back in the day, yeah, this was all the rage. So we're going by, I love that we have a month timer too, a month ticker. So a lot of government types are basically going to change, not all the time, but a lot of them change due to war, due to the losing of a war. But that's not always the case. Of course, it could be a civil war or an invading force. Sometimes it just kind of switches. But, it's going to be hard to define exactly why some of these governments are switching. Well, first of all, France, we already talked about the French Revolution. They've officially become a democracy. Now, it's very important to talk about the democracies of the world because now, in 1793, there's officially just one. It's the United States. Haiti's going to get their independence. Was Haiti briefly a democracy for a little bit? Haiti apparently has not been a stable democracy by any means, but they were the second nation to become independent in the American continents. That's why I was talking about them. It's actually pretty difficult to determine exactly who was the first few democracies because obviously that stretches all the way back to Athens, way back in the day, way before America. But regardless, we do have a French here, a French empire. Well, they're not an empire, but France briefly that is under the democracy. And remember, at this time, Paris has a ton of population. So when they turn democratic, look at this wheel. Look at this massive chunk of European population that is now in a democracy, momentarily. Obviously, this is going to switch back and forth, like I said. It looks like democracy does spread through modern-day Belgium here, too, and get partially into the Holy Roman Empire, but then they switch back. Poland, Lithuania, my bad, becomes a democracy, but in a different sense of the word. It's more of a conservative hybrid, not a revolutionary/provisional. So we now have democracies, quote unquote, with the UK, with Ireland, with France, with Poland, Lithuania. Is Ireland actually supposed to be independent this time? Well, regardless, they're still being definitely bullied by the British, that's for sure. We also do have a couple of full democracies, one of them being in Venice, also the Dutch here, which is incredible. So the Holy Roman Empire is going to end, which is going to clean this map up quite a bit. So that's going to be nice. It's 1795 here. We have a lot of dependent governments or occupied. Oh, so we're going to see a lot of that because of wars that are occurring. Boom. So the rise of the French Empire is going to begin right now, especially as the Holy Roman Empire does, in fact, end. So that's the biggest thing to look out for. Obviously, we still have monarchies all over Russia, Austria, Prussia, the Ottoman Empire, which extends obviously into the Anatolia Peninsula, but we are focusing on just the map of Europe. So this is an okay video to do to focus on just Europe, especially at this time in the world, because remember, most of the world is essentially controlled by just the Europeans at this point. Now, towards the end of the video, when we get to past the 1950s and things like that, then we see a bunch of independences around the world. We'd see, Africa having, in the middle of the Cold War, there was a bunch of different ideological changes happening. But yeah, overall decolonization occurred all around the world. But for this part, if you're wondering what else is going on in the rest of the world, well, you kind of just need to take a look at Europe for the most part, because it's very likely that one of these European nations probably controls the territory that you're wondering about, except if you're Japan or a couple of the outliers, Thailand, certain parts of Africa like Ethiopia, Liberia. Bam. Okay, so France is already switching a couple times. They're the ones that are really, their colors are changing quite a bit. Remember that France at this time, very angry, embarrassed by the British several times. I mean, they kind of got slight revenge on the Brits by making their colony America go independent. But yeah, they're upset. The ideas of democracy have spread it over to across the Atlantic, and they have spread it to the French people. And that's why there is all this chaos that's taking place. But what is that called again? The Batavian Republic. And then obviously Switzerland here, they're in the green. France has officially become a monarchy or an authoritarian state. So this is led by Napoleon, and he is going to spread a lot of ideas all around Europe. All sorts of different ideas. Look at Serbia go. Serbia being a partial democracy. Not fully. It's a transitional. Oh, I see. It's transitional. Did I read that wrong at first? I might have. My bad. Not the first time, that's for sure. Warsaw is here. And this is when Napoleon is at his height in 1812, 1811. He's about to invade the Russians right now. So a lot of red all over the place. We're not going to get rid of red for quite some time. But there is a civil war going on in Spain. That's because the French occupy Spain, and there's, a Vietnam War essentially happening right now. Boom, the French took over Catalonia. This is occupied territory by the French as they move into Moscow. Moscow gets burned down. Warsaw gets taken back. Spain briefly a democracy. And bam, Napoleon has been ousted. He's been sent to an island somewhere far, far away the second time. And he's definitely not coming back from this one. We have a couple of elective monarchies, obviously one being the papacy in the Papal States, also Wallachia, also Moldova. And so we're going to see the journey. Again, watch the French. The French are the ones in the 1800s that are really going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. But it's 1818, and now we have the German Confederation here. Watch as the rise of Germany occurs. Prussia begins to eat up all those states in Germany until obviously becomes all of Germany. There is one full democracy, democratic canton here in Switzerland. And we do have democracies in the south of Italy, back in Greece, in Spain, in Portugal. They were definitely toying with this idea quite a bit, but it always switches back to the monarchy because, again, it's just a they're kind of testing the waters a little bit, as you can see. They're kind of dipping their toes a bit into the water. People are getting their independence. This is this is people in the Balkans getting their independence away from the Ottoman Empire because the Ottomans have been the dying man in Europe for several centuries now. Poland is back, and Poland is gone again. They were briefly gone. Look at the division of Switzerland. Portugal is now in a civil war, but they've gone back to a democracy. Look at democracy really spread. Look at this. 1839, from Spain, Portugal, France, parts of the German states, the UK. Okay, Ireland is now gone. Norway, Sweden. Iceland over here. I forgot about Iceland. So at this point, they have not gone after Africa. I actually should have mentioned that there was no Berlin Conference yet until 1884. So a lot of the Europeans do not control a large portion of Africa just yet, but they will. There's going to be an American Civil War that happens. That's going to take place back in the States. Everyone's just going to kind of sit around and watch that. Serbia, still going with their democracy. Look at the situation that Serbia is in, just smashed in between Austria and the Ottoman Empire. Doesn't look too fun, that's for sure. 1847, whoa, here's a bunch of transitional democracies, or revolutionary, provisional. We have the Swiss finally, and this is kind of funny to see the Swiss so advanced because I don't know why. This is something to keep in mind. Randomly, a thought that came to my head. Switzerland did not allow women to vote until 1971. So perhaps that is why they were a democracy so early on. Now, to be fair, a lot of the democracies at this time were probably not letting women vote. Actually, they definitely were not. Maybe there was a couple of outliers. Obviously, the U.S. did not allow women to vote until like the 1920s, the suffrage movement, things like that. In fact, the first place to even allow women to vote weren't even in the American continents or in Europe. It was New Zealand, and it was in 1893. That is still very, very late. But the reason why I was bashing on Switzerland is just because, not because they were the outlier for not letting women vote, but because they waited so long to let women vote. That's from a nationwide. I think the different cantons had different regulations. The last Swiss canton that allowed women to vote, though, was in the year 1990. That's crazy, bro. That's only 35 years ago. How did they get away? How did the Swiss canton get away with that? Yeah, basically when you look this stuff up, like, you won't even get into women voting up until the 1900s, till 1911, 1921. Oh my God. By the way, weird time to throw this in here, but if you haven't already, please consider hitting subscribe. If you like this analysis, if you like me breaking down different maps or whatever videos I do here, it helps out tremendously when you hit the sub button. It helps out in the algorithm. YouTube's like, oh, people are subbing. I should probably push these out to more people. That way we can educate more of the world on these topics, because obviously if you're watching this video, you more than likely are interested in this stuff, and the more we get people to watch, the more hopefully we can get people to learn about all these fascinating topics that I love to talk about. Something like 60% of people are still not subscribed over here, so just always wanted to remind people if you haven't hit that sub button yet. All right, so it is the year 1850. We still have 175 years to go, believe it or not. So we still have, so again, don't be fooled. I mean, this is, I just wanted to bring that up because, yes, Switzerland's looking like a big, beautiful light blue right here. Full democracy. I mean, can you call it a full democracy when half your population can't vote? I mean, in fact, probably slightly more than half your population because remember, women live longer than men, and also they don't tend to die at as high of rates as men do, especially during these times when people are sending them out to war. But Switzerland at the same time has been at peace. This is when they begin their whole neutrality thing. They don't go. They basically have not participated in a war since the Napoleonic era, if I remember correctly. Sardinia, here we go. So 1861, we have the unification of Italy. Now we're going to see the unification of Germany. They're still going to have to do something with the Pope here, but that's fine. So the Prussians are going to lead a war against the French. Look at that. Finally, more than half the population. Did that just occur? Yes, it actually just occurs in the year 18... It actually begins with the unification led by Sardinia, who eventually transitions over to Italy. That is the beginning one. That's, this transitional democracy, democratic government, or hybrid, conservative/hybrid. I mean, I don't even know how fair it is to call this democracies. I feel like until you get into the full, that's the thing about this video. It's really hard to define other governments, and it's really hard to define what every country's system is using. This is not an easy topic because, I mean, hey, look at the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea. That is not the official name of South Korea. That is the official name for North Korea. Does anyone believe that that is a democracy? No. And that's why it's so complicated. There's going to be a certain popular face that pops up in this video very soon. The National Socialists out of Germany. People get all confused about that word, the socialists. They were the no-no Germans, led by Hitler himself. So it's really hard to define this. I'm thinking Ali Bai here is probably just going based off of what the government defines itself as, but what it actually is in reality could vary drastically, as I just mentioned those two examples. Bam. Okay, so we still have a lot of monarchy and authoritarianism in Eastern Europe, and it's probably going to remain that way for quite a bit here. But yes, here we go. We have Germany, the Franco-Prussian War that occurs in, we have a USA Civil War that's happening, and everyone's watching that. Look at that. Look what a weird turn of events where briefly we have a time period where France is the only monarchy/authoritarian government. Oh, they're led by Napoleon III, I believe, at this time. I also believe that they are attacking Mexico. Now, we're still a ways away from the whole one-party socialist. We're not going to see any of that anytime soon. However, we are approaching, I believe Marx is alive, and he's beginning to write books and things like that. So we'll see communism and socialism pop up. Oh yeah, we're actually way beyond the time he published the Communist Manifesto. So again, Prussia is going to lead the German states into a war with the French. And Spain is over here being green. There's the occupation right there. Germany has officially formed, and it is 1872 right here. They're still being occupied over there in France. Okay, so France and Switzerland right here, full democracies, full-on democracies. Meanwhile, we have transitional democracies. The Greeks are back now briefly. The big thing, we're entering into the Crimean War with the French and the British going in after the Russians with the Ottomans. The Crimean War is beginning. We have Bulgaria with Ruthenia. What is that? Bulgarian kind of switched up here. A dependent government out of Bosnia. 1884, the mark of the Berlin Conference. Okay, so now the Europeans are going to carve up the entire African continent. We have a couple of full democracies now, finally, with the French, the Swiss, the UK, Bulgaria, Greece. You'd be surprised at how long it takes certain nations to get there. You'd be very, very surprised at how long it takes to get there. It's crazy how long we used absolute monarchies / authority. I mean, it's interesting because there is a difference. There definitely is a difference. But you'd be surprised at how long human beings literally just used absolute monarchies. And to be fair, I can't even really blame them It kind of is just at the end of the day a little bit easier, especially, before we have the technology that we have and the data that we have and all that stuff. It's just a little bit easier just to let one guy be in charge. I'm sorry to say. That's probably a little controversial, but I'm just saying for the human beings like 500 years ago, you probably do just want, for logistical reasons, purely logistical, one dude in charge. And probably the family in charge, because he's able to tell his family, hey, what to do, what to watch out for, here's the mistakes I made. Obviously, that backfires several times in history because you got a psycho son that comes in, into power, or when you have like a incompetent ruler. Well, the thing is, like when you have an incompetent ruler, you just kill him, right? I mean, that's literally what you did. You give him a couple chances, and then if his guard is ever down, you just take him out if he's doing that bad of a job. But from like the Caesar times and the Roman times, kind of generally, logistically speaking, easier just let one guy go at it, basically. And then you can throw like little councils to keep them in check, do certain combinations of democracy and things like that. But it's not easy to run a democracy. Democracy is not an easy thing to do. So that's my biggest point here, is I'm not surprised it took so many nations a while to get it going. The voting process, not simple. The logistics of counting the votes and things like that. All right, it's 1895. I still, democracy is good. Just wanted to point that out. I like democracy. But anyways, so there's still a ton of other things going on. Russia's going to remain an authoritarian. I love that Russia they're actually a monarchy right now. Peter the Great, or what's his name? Nikolai. My bad. He is is he authoritarian? Is he considered a monarchy? This is the Russian Empire, technically. So actually, speak of the devil, right here, they're about to take a massive L to the Japanese, and the Japanese are going to really surprise them, surprising the world. In fact, not just the Russians, but they're going to surprise the world as the Japanese kind of prove that, hey, we're powered to be reckoned with over here in Asia, as the first colonial. I mean, they were kind of a colonial power. They definitely were. They were gathering up colonies at this time, especially messing with China. There's a lot of talk about. I've been fascinated by one of these theories that Japan just moved in this power vacuum that took place, because right now we're still very deeply in the Chinese century of humiliation. This is like, we're still pretty deep into China's humiliation period. It's like 100 years of just China taking L, and that kind of defines who they are today. They don't ever want to be in a position where they're taking L after L. But there's lots of argument that say that Japan, as they rise up the crazy things they're doing back in Asia, it was really just the void that China left for so long. So it was very easy for Japan to just pop into that spot, pop into that regional continental power, I guess you could say, when there was a lack of one over there. So it's 1904, and we're entering into the times of World War II, or World War I, sorry. There's also an Italian-Libyan war. Italy's taking Libya away from the Ottomans. Oh, look at the Ottomans. They're like, they're really getting obviously pushed away from the Balkans. They're going to lose World War I, obviously. Spoiler alert. Wow, 1909, and technically we have transitional democracies everywhere, / hybrids. And even Portugal entering into full democracy mode, which is interesting because Portugal's going to go into fascism very soon. So this should be kind of a warning here. I think this is a moment to kind of explain that, a lot of these countries have been democracies, and then we're going to see in the 1930s, when things get desperate for a lot of places, what human beings kind of end up choosing to do. And a lot of these countries are going to choose fascism. I mean, I'm looking at Portugal. I'm looking at you, Portugal. Portugal, I don't know exactly what. Well, I think they're going to be classified as authoritarianism. Is that still controversial? Is that still like undefined? I believe that, a game like Hearts of Iron 4, for example, I believe they're under non-aligned, but sometimes they're also considered a fascist nation. It's very hard to define what countries had, and I'm sure there's going to be arguments in this comment section and talking about this country was technically this at this time period and yada yada yada. Very hard to define. All right, it's World War I time. Look at that. Italy turned into a full democracy, and yet they're going to be the first nation to adopt fascism in 1923, getting Benito Mussolini in charge. Bam, 1914, World War I begins. Italy's going to stay out of it up until the end, and then they inevitably join the Entente. Germany's fighting the French and the Russians. The USA is not involved yet. Oh, I love that we get to see this war map. Yeah, Serbia is going to get crushed pretty badly. 1917 occurs. Look at how much population. There's going to be a massive population under the European continent that change overnight whenever Russia changes. And that's what's going to happen right here. So I think technically Russia's already out of the war. They are now. Now they're in a civil war. So there's a brief time period where Germany controls a lot of Eastern Europe, but then they're going to lose World War I overall. Wow, look at how much blue we got during the middle of the Great War. Bam, the war is officially over. There's still a civil war happening in the USSR, but look, democracy has taken over by the end of what they called at the time just the Great War. And you get all these states. Now, in the span of the next 15 years, this is going to change drastically. And I believe we're just going to call this fascism. One-party socialism has popped up. Oh, no, sorry. Hungary's gone back to monarchy. The Ottomans are being invaded. The Anatolia Peninsula, the Turks, Auto-Turk moment is about to occur. One-party socialism. Now that the socialists, the USSR, have to regain Ukraine and Belarus, and they will, and they're going to go after the Baltics. Poland has been reborn, but 44 out of the 459 million people living in Europe right now, looks like 63 or 65% of them are under full democracies in the 1920s. Look at Germany still being occupied. This is the Rhineland. Is it occupied? Dependent government occupied. They can't remilitarize this zone. So that's kind of interesting. We have the Roaring 20s. Boom! Fascism has now just taken over. One-party socialism. No, this is just them going. I see. Okay, sorry. I'm getting those two reds confused. So we have authoritarianism coming back in Hungary, in Turkey, interesting, and in Italy. So Benito, first fascist ruler, he gets in charge 10 years before the mustache man is in charge in Germany. At this point, Hitler's looking up to Benito. It's like, oh yeah, that guy's cool, and he's going to change his opinion, obviously, quite drastically over time. Fascist. While Franco is about to come in charge, there's going to be a civil war very soon. This is a monarchy, I believe, back in Spain, right? So the Spanish Civil War doesn't happen until like 1936. Albania is a monarchy. Portugal even here too. Poland's kind of a transitional. Jeez, look at this. Look at how much humans have just, these different governments have rolled on back to the old monarchy and authoritarianism status. Crazy how much things can change in literally just 10 years. Boom, 1931. In 33 is when the No Germans take over. Look at this red. In Yugoslavia, in Italy, in Germany, in Portugal. So we are going to define Portugal as an authoritarianism. In all of the Baltic states, absolutely crazy. Oh yeah, Finland gained its independence during the Russian Civil War. Forgot to mention that. They're a full democracy. Poland here too. It's 1936. Where's the Spanish Civil War? There it is. So they're just in civil war mode right now. We have now split Europe into three massive ideologies: democracy, back to authoritarianism, and then we have one-party socialism. That's only being practiced in the Soviet Union at this point. Possibly Mongolia as well. There actually might be another one that I'm thinking of, but it's just in the span. You would think after the Great War, it's like, oh yeah. So this just shows like when humans are desperate, they do revert back to authoritarianism. Essentially is what goes down here. Bam, now Romania even too. In 1938, we have, boom, Spain. The Spanish Civil War just ended, so Franco is now in charge. We now have a world, it looks like what it looked like 100 years ago, which is crazy. Look, just by scrolling over this map, and you saw what things looked like in 1921, this is how much things have changed. Wow. Now, remember, you're dealing with, like, economic problems all around the world, the Great Depression. Germany's just very angry and upset. People are just kind of desperate. And that is how these things occurred. So 1939, right when September rolls around, this is officially the start of a World War II, at least in Europe. So the phony war happens. Poland immediately gets eaten up, literally in a month. And we only have a couple of full democracies. We have the Winter War between Finland and the Soviet Union. Bam, they're going to go. The Germans are going to go around the lowlands. They're going to take that over. They're going to spread fascism Well, actually, it's just going to, I guess the map's just going to kind of keep them under occupied territory. And boom, the Swiss all in the middle of it. Sorry. The Swiss just stayed full democracy, I see. It's just, they're now a full democracy island. They're literally a democratic island because the French just fell to the Germans, so they're now authoritarian. Denmark is an authoritarian state, or sorry, Denmark is a transitional democracy, even though they are absolutely occupied. How does this work? Ali Bai is a very good creator. There's a reason why he put the Belgians and the Netherlands in gray, as well as Norway, and didn't with Denmark. So maybe they were under a unique status going on here. So yeah, 1941, Operation Barbarossa, the Germans are invading, and now the Germans are beginning to get pushed back. Authoritarianism here in Norway. Sweden stays out of it. Right now, Finland is a part of the Axis, but the Lapland Wars are going to begin. They're going to start to turn on the Germans. Bam, we're liberating Italy. Well, briefly, it's 1944. There's a civil war going on. D-Days just occurred. We've liberated France. And then boom, Germany right here. So now watch as the world gets split up between two ideologies. We were split between three. Now it's going to be split between two. Now we're still, a lot of fallout has to happen. First of all, World War II just ended in Europe and it's about to end in Asia. Boom, look at all these different occupied zones. We got the American zone, the French zone, the British zone, and the Soviet zone. The same thing's going on in Austria. Right now, briefly, Czechoslovakia is known as a full democracy, so is Hungary. Does it stay like that, though? Is that technically what it remains? Obviously, Yugoslavia is under Tito here. They are communist, but yeah, they're technically one-party socialist. We have West Germany and East Germany now forming up. Obviously, the eastern side being communist. All of Eastern and Central Europe under this one-party socialist rule. Austria still hasn't been put back together. And then we have still forms of... so I guess Ali Bai here is considering Iberia being fully fascist. Spain at this time, led by Franco, he's allying more to NATO. He's allying more to the West. So is Portugal. Even though they're not, I don't think they're in NATO just yet, but they will be. Turkey is a democracy, and they have joined NATO. Greece is a transitional... Oh, isn't there a Greek civil war going on? Okay, boom, Austria's... They settled that whole ordeal. Austria's allowed to be a full democracy. Boom, 1957, you got the height of the Cold War. At any moment, the world could end. I mean, that's literally what these people were thinking. At any moment, nuclear annihilation. They are facing that every single day, and they've been facing that for a couple years. It's been a minute now, but we're definitely approaching the height of the Cold War in the 50s. Certainly in the 60s, we're gonna have the Cuban Missile Crisis. Things are not going to change all that much. Things stay very, very frozen in the Cold War, and that's just because the Soviets are just holding on. They're holding on for, well, right now they're doing pretty good in the 60s. In the 70s, the West is not beginning to look too good. We kind of have a recession during the 70s. Things aren't looking all that great. Oh, we have the Vietnam War that's occurring. We have the Six-Day War in Israel. Greece right now is briefly a monarchy, authoritarian. That's crazy. In 1969. Here it is in the 70s. Again, when I look at the Cold War, the 70s was not the greatest decade when it came to the outlook of things, the outlook of like who's going to come out on top in the Cold War. I'm sure a lot of people just kind of gave up on, hey, this is just how the world works, and like we're not going to end it. We're just going to be split up between two ideologies basically forever. I would not be surprised if the vast majority of, maybe a lot of Americans, the European mindset must have been drastically different, just like it is right now. You can see it literally in Ukraine versus Russia. A lot of Americans don't focus too heavily. A lot of them pretty much forgot about that whole conflict a year into it. But Europe is still extremely invested, as they should be. It's right on their doorstep. They should be way more invested. So I'm sure the Europeans in the Cold War were way more focused on what's going on in the Cold War, what's going on with the Soviet side of things and wanting to end it and things like that. I think a lot of Americans were just in the peace and love movement right here. It's the early 70s. Oh, but the hippie movement did cross the Atlantic. It was certainly in the UK. It was certainly, you had people doing that. There was doing that. What is that called? The bus of love bus. That sounds crazy. That sounds like a no-no website. But somebody was doing. They were doing like hippie excursions from like France all the way to like Thailand and India, and they were driving through like Afghanistan, and at this time Iran, because Iran was still pretty safe. This is before the Iranian Revolution. I can't remember what that was called. So boom, Franco is about to die, or maybe he already did die, and they're a full Oh no, I think I'm thinking Tito. When did Franco die? Tito's about to die in 1980, but they're going to remain a one-party socialist movement here for a minute. 1980s is really when the communist world starts to see a lot of pressure. Those grocery store prices going up. You're going to see True Noble, the disaster that was True Noble. The economies of the communist world, and also just the cultural movement that begins to happen in the 80s through music and song, and it goes beyond that. American television, just the West culturally, that's when really the Americans start to win a cultural victory in terms of like a Civilization 5 or Civilization series sort of game victory. This is when things really, I mean, you look back at the time, literally Pizza Hut is a lot of times credited with the downfall of the communist world, at least the Soviet Union. Pizza Hut and metal music, Metallica played like one of the biggest shows of all time right before the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 or something like that, like a month before that. Also Pepsi, Pepsi was the one I was thinking about, Pepsi and Pizza Hut. So yeah, the rise of you have Reagan in charge, but yeah, the cultural victory really occurs here for America. And bam, the communist world begins to collapse here. In 1989, we're going to see a reunification of Germany. And there it is. So Hungary drops, Czechoslovakia, which aren't they split up right now? Aren't they supposed to be split? Or they're about to be split. Boom, unification of Germany, 1991. The Warsaw Pact is done for. We now have just Russia, Ukraine, Belarus get their independence. Basically, everyone gets their independence. We just are cleaning up basically in Yugoslavia. So we have to do the Yugoslavian wars. Kosovo is going to worship Bill Clinton. They're going to put a statue of him up in there. Yeah, so there's a civil war happening. Poor Bosnia. Bam, we now have 693 million Europeans in this world. A lot of them are still transitional democracies. And we now enter the new millennium. It's the year 2000. Yugoslavia stuff hasn't completely split up yet, but it's, I guess, technically a full democracy. Belarus becomes technically authoritarian. Oh, so Lukashenko has taken charge in Belarus, I believe. But Russia isn't. When does Russia transition? I'm really curious because Putin has been charged for a minute now. Are we going to safely call Russia an authoritarian? Because it's been like 25 years of... Well, he changes from, like, Putin's changed from, like, prime minister to president to, like, back to prime minister or something like that, vice versa. Maybe they're, oh, okay, there you go. Officially in 2012, Putin becomes leader. Russia takes over Crimea in 2014. Yep, that's right. All these democracies in 2016. Yeah, the annexation is illegal. 2022 also with that invasion. We got the COVID. And this is the way things are looking, This is the way things are looking right now. Disputed oblasts, yeah. But like we saw at the end of World War I, things can change on a dime. And they might possibly. I mean, the authoritarianism can come out of nowhere really fast, especially in democracies. It can change so fast. So just because the world is looking very light blue, that does not mean it's going to stay light blue, because people can vote for basically anything they want. So it's going to be interesting to see what things are looking like in the next 10 years, especially definitely be looking at this a lot if the economy starts to struggle. If we start seeing an economic recession worldwide, people getting desperate, and if it lasts long enough, they'll start making some crazy voting decisions. It's interesting to see how much Europe's governments have changed over the past centuries. There was a lot more democracy during the concert of Europe than I thought. Me too. I was very surprised by that. My man added Flevoland when it was created. Amazing eye for detail. That's the thing about Olibai. I love reviewing his... this guy's incredible. I love reviewing his channel. Definitely go subscribe. I think fascist regimes, monarchist regimes, and modern-day Russia/Belarus should be taken different colors, like brown for fascism, gray for monarchism. I definitely understand where he's getting at there, but it's hard to cover 200 years and have so many different categories. I mean, just overall, the visualness of the video would be harder to define. But yeah, calling Hungary and Serbia full democracies in 2025 is questionable. That's why I made a reference that you always got to be careful. You probably have to take what the government calls themselves. Actually, I don't know, because if North Korea is calling itself a democracy, you can't really in good faith believe that, right? Like I said, if you enjoy these commentaries, please subscribe. It helps out tremendously. Hitting that button changes so much for me in the future of this channel and the performance in the algorithm and things like that. So I would be truly grateful. Thank you. And a big thanks to my patrons this month. Drew's abandoned son from Alabama. Petition for Drew to make Hoi 4 ASMR Tingles version 2. Nolan. Alexander the Terrible. Nord Tyrol. Miglu the Goat. King Bear Hayes. Connor Pavlik. Frederick Tiblin. Carmel. Drew's Argentinian Trust Fund. Rip Grandpa. Douche Baggins. Luxembourg Lover. And Tambrin.